4th, May 1st, 2012 open meeting of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission to order. Thank you to our hardy band of friends who are joining us today in the bad weather. Under ordinary, by the way, I wanted to talk about today's streaming or lack thereof. We, as the commissioners all know, and I'd like the public to know, we're very committed to figuring out how to do this in as transparent and accessible a way as we possibly can. Usually that means that we will stream this live. However, in our process of trying to find a permanent home for these meetings and to find a cost that we think is appropriate for the streaming, it varies enormously from venue to venue. We've had somewhere between 50 and 100 watchers on the streaming of the meetings. Presumably that will grow over time, and I think it's really important from the standpoint of the regionality of this, so everybody in the state has access to these meetings. However, today it was going to cost us an extra $3,500 to do the streaming, and we just made it what was a hard decision that we didn't think that was worth the $3,500. Or I guess I should say I made that decision because I don't think I talked to anybody about it. But we're going to try to set it up so that we can have it be a reasonable expense and have it be every time. But today we're not able to do it. Instead, we will have the video up on the website along with the transcript, which we're expediting this week, up on the website tomorrow. So that will hopefully pretty much make up for it. Under ordinary circumstances, item 2 on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Commissioner McHugh, as you can see, Judge McHugh is away on a trip that he had planned prior to becoming commissioner, and as he is the secretary and prepares those minutes, he hasn't had a chance to do that, so I think we'll postpone those. They will be available within the time frame, but we are not going to be able to approve them formally today. So we get to item 3, which is a series of administrative issues, starting out with our search for an executive director / acting executive director. And Commissioner Stebbins has been taking the lead on this. We talked about it a little bit yet last week and hoped that we could tee things up finally for today. And how would you like to bring us up to date?
Sure.
Kick it off?
First of all, as all of you know, we have issued an RFR again for a consultant to assist us with the recruitment and hiring of a permanent executive director. That RFR closes now at the end of this month, the month of May. In the meantime, since we have seen a draft proposal of coordinated work between our two consultants, Spectrum and Michael and Carol, one of the items they identified was assisting us with that recruitment or with the search. My hope is I'm going to reach out to both Spectrum and Michael and Carol, begin to think about what work we can line up in advance of kind of speed the process along, whether that be understanding sources that we'll turn to in terms of posting the position, perhaps even coming up with a draft job description based on their knowledge of the bill as well as their interaction with other jurisdictions and what those executive director requirements have been. So hopefully we can kind of speed the process so that when we ultimately select a recruitment firm, we can almost have some of the work done. Great. In terms of an acting executive director, as you can imagine, our challenge here was not necessarily looking for all the qualifications we would look for in a permanent executive director, but finding somebody with a good base of skills to assist the commission with the basic operation and nuts and bolts of how do we do our day-to-day business, be it hiring, procurement, some basic Massachusetts state government responsibilities, and finding somebody with some experience doing that. I think our next challenge was how do we find somebody who could come over here on an interim basis without putting ourselves in a position of having to promise or guarantee that person employment, again, if they decided to go into the search or not. I think that was a challenge, kind of asking somebody within state government to walk away from their permanent position to come to us on an interim basis with no guarantee of employment after an executive director search was done was difficult. We did get some resumes that just kind of came into us generally. There were some individuals who had gaming business experience, which I didn't feel was something that we were looking for at this point. You know, they certainly might be qualified candidates for the permanent executive director position. We also had a couple of resumes come in, and people we met with, feel them out where their experience and interest might lie. And there really wasn't anybody out of that group who I thought was a perfect fit for our immediate needs in this acting executive director position. I think last meeting I mentioned we had received a proposal from a former gaming control commissioner from Nevada. I kind of compared his scope or proposal with the work project outline that our consultants have proposed to us, and there certainly were similarities that I thought we might be having two people overlapping and doing too much of the same work. I attempted to reach the individual from Nevada on several occasions and never received a response back. I think additionally we would have had a challenge because at some point the rate being considered or suggested to us would have put us past the $50,000 mark. So in looking at our procurement regs, I think we would have had to essentially post that consulting services, another RFR there again, kind of dragging out the process longer than we had hoped for. A person that kind of came to mind who is already within state government, certainly has an extensive knowledge about how Beacon Hill and state government operate, as well as somebody who has a firm understanding of the legislation as it was passed, is Stan McGee from the Executive Office of Economic Development and Community Development, where he's been an assistant secretary. We've included his resume. We asked for his resume. We've included it in your packet. But to have some discussion today about appointing him, kind of borrowing him, I guess, from the administration for the interim period to be our acting executive director. I think we get somebody who has good knowledge of the inner workings of Beacon Hill, state government, at the same time has obviously an acute awareness of every provision within the bill as it was passed. And I think you know, we're borrowing him essentially to come over assist us during this interim period. And again, while we also move forward with the process to go out and solicit resumes to be considered for the full permanent executive director of the commission.
You talked to some other folks about him also, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to fill
Sure.
in on that?
Again, we attempted to reach out to the proposal we had from the gentleman from Nevada. Again, comparing his scope of work, a lot of the work there mirrored what our consultants, Spectrum and Michael and Carol, will already be doing for us, and also really never received a call or an email back from the gentleman.
No, I was talking about Stan McGee. You talked to other people about Stan McGee.
Yes.
Reference checks.
I contacted former Secretary O'Connell, who was Mr. McGee's boss during his tenure in the administration. And something that was kind of highlighted to me, which I found a tremendous amount of interest in, was Stan's work with the Massachusetts Life Sciences Initiative, a $1 billion initiative on behalf of the state, where Stan had some extensive work in the early organizational days of getting the Life Sciences Initiative up and off the ground, including doing some initial hiring of staff to again, get the initiative up and off the ground. And I think that's somewhat where we find ourselves.
Right.
Kind of at that early stage, we're looking to make some smart initial hires. And again, I just think Stan's awareness of the legislation and everything it calls for is pretty well positions us to do that, in addition to have somebody who I think will work well with both Spectrum and Michael and Carol.
Right. I also did some checking out, and Commissioner Stebbins and I have taken the lead on this, and there was an elephant in the room with Stan, as I've now sent information around to you about this. He went this horrendous experience of being accused of a sexual harassment charge in several years ago in Florida. He brought it up as something that we ought to be aware of and consider. I actually was not aware of it. And we thought that obviously is something we had to think through. And as I think the material that I sent around said, this was investigated 6 ways from Sunday by the state attorney general in Florida, and the state attorney, like our DAs, I think, and the state attorney decided that there was no evidence to proceed on. It was dropped completely. Then Dan O'Connell, who was his boss, looked into the whole situation again to see if there was any reason why he shouldn't come back into the administration. Dan O'Connell came to the conclusion there was nothing, that this was a warrantless, meritless allegation, and that Stan's record was pristine. And then the governor's office did the same thing. And I talked with the governor's office, you talked with Dan, and there's an absolute clarity on the part of his present hiring authority, which I think gives us an awful lot of comfort. If everybody from the Florida state attorney, who never even brought a charge to the governor, of all the political sensitivities of the world that he lives in, feels like this was a false charge and has no merit whatsoever. If all of those parties think that, then I feel comfortable that we're okay with it. I mean, it's realistic. Mr. McGee said to me, you guys should know about it. It may come up. And I know how sensitive, said he, I know how sensitive you are to the issue and to the brand of integrity and so forth. But for my money, there is nothing to this, and to hold it against him in any way would not be appropriate. But I want, I know you're thinking about it, and so I want you to, let me go through a few other issues that I went through, and then I think we should talk about it. He would like to be a candidate for the permanent position, and I said that was, he would like not to have been precluded for that. I said this would not prejudice him anyway. We would keep him completely separate from the drafting of the search document. This would not prejudice one way or the other, but I also told him that all of our strong predispositions is that for the permanent ED, we are hoping we can find somebody with very serious gaming commission management experience. That's not absolute, but I wanted him to be very clear and not come in with any false expectations. And he was clear on that, and he's clear. And I talked with Secretary Bielecki, his present boss, who also speaks very highly of him, and is prepared to give him a leave to let him come right back after however long it takes, 3, 4, 5 months, if he does not end up with a permanent position. He has a couple of responsibilities now that are major. One is negotiating this broadband initiative the state is undertaking. I'm not quite sure what that is. He will drop that, pass it on to somebody else. He's also one of the lead negotiators from the governor's office, on behalf of the governor's office, on the tribal compact. And that's something we talked about quite a bit. And again, I'd like to have your thoughts on. I ask whether he would like to keep that up. He thinks dropping out of that would be very difficult, and for the governor's office. And I asked whether that cut one way or the other. Was that a good thing, bad thing, negative thing, neutral thing? And we tried to think it through, and we could not think of any way. It is conceivable that at some point the governor's negotiators might have a different view of what an appropriate compact should be. Who knows? We don't know about that. But that's possible. If that were to happen, it seemed to me that, if anything, having McGee working with us probably would be good for us. He would be even more sympathetic to the perspective that we bring to the table, which is ultimately going to be a very important perspective, because we're going to own this whatever it is when it's done. So we talked about that. Again, I think it's something that you ought to think about and react to, but we couldn't think of any. The other issue was just the sense of independence, whether Everybody has wanted it to be clear that the commission is quite independent. We're not a creature of the governor. We're not a creature of the legislature. We're not beholden to anybody. For the record, all of the politicians have respected that to the nth degree so far. Would there be any appearance of an issue there? And again, I think it's a fair question. I think it's worth thinking about, but I don't think this is going to look like we're under control. It's a temporary position. My sense is that does not create a problem. I certainly don't feel that it creates a problem in terms of the reality of our independence, and I don't think it's an appreciable appearance problem either. So the guy is a superstar by any measure. In fact, if I may say, you raised that issue, but he's a Rhodes Scholar. He's a Harvard Law School graduate. I mean, the guy is incredible. He was a senior attorney at a major downtown law firm. I think it was Hale and Dorr at that point. He knows that. He also, I talked to Senator Stan Rosenberg, who was the Senate's lead negotiator, very, very knowledgeable about this, and he spoke exceedingly highly of Stan McGee. So to be able to get somebody who knows state government, who's in state government, who is super smart, and who knows this law backwards and forwards, and actually knows a fair amount about the gaming commission, gaming business, even though he's not been in it. I mean, I think, I can't imagine how we could ever come up with this is Steve speaking, I can't imagine how we could come up with a better person myself. So that's the extent of my thought process. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I could speak to this matter. I had the opportunity to attend a public safety meeting last week with the highest level public safety officials in the state regarding the compact. And Mr. McGee was part of putting that meeting together. I was very, very impressed with his subject matter knowledge of gaming and the aspects that we'll need to know moving forward. Also very impressed with his level of concern for the public safety aspect and realizing that this would be something we'd all have to grapple with and what needed to be said in the compact, language that speaks to enforcement issues. So that was my first opportunity to observe and work with Mr. McGee, and I was very, very impressed. Also, I'm very sensitive to, from a law enforcement standpoint, evidence versus an unsubstantiated allegation. And every document that I've looked at with regard to this matter, there is no shred of evidence. There are no witness accounts of the allegation, and it's completely unsubstantiated, so that does not enter into my decision at all in moving forward with this individual. In fact, we do the individual a disservice if we took this into consideration. I did have a concern thinking about the perception, someone working, negotiating in the governor's office. And like you, Mr. Chair, I did try to think through, would there be a situation where there would be a conflict, or a perceived conflict would probably more likely. And I really couldn't think of an instance that I could wrap my arms around saying, well, we shouldn't do this because this may happen. I really couldn't foresee that, and I think you explained that well. And I think what you were referring to when we had a conversation, or just a brief conversation on another matter, was this individual is so knowledgeable and very, very bright, and I wondered if he'd be challenged enough by this position. Because with an acting position, we're talking about a startup, and I wondered, and I know you had the opportunity to ask that particular question, so, that was not a concern, so I would concur that this is a very, very talented individual. And we should look to make this move.
In my view, what we need desperately is to get freed up so we can do our jobs of trying to get ready to make decisions on licensing, learning what we need to know, getting that process going, and do it as quickly as we can, and do it well. We don't need to be about the business of either standing up the organization. We don't need to be about the business of making sure that our computers are working, and we're doing stuff like that. We don't need to be doing procurements. We're doing all that work. We're doing staff work at the moment, which is fine. I'm happy to do it, but we shouldn't be doing it. So having him take the lead and also freeing up Janice, who's supposed to be supporting the commission as we do our primary work, would be priority number one. But I also think there are things we want to work with the consultant on, like some issues we'll get to later on in the agenda, but we don't really want to be spending all the time working with the consultant as we're talking about writing the long-term regs and sort of setting up the organizational structure for hires that are going to be a year down the road. So I think those are two areas, and he is a high-end capable guy. He has had very much this startup experience with the Life Sciences Institute. He was the startup guy before they hired Susan Wyndham-Bannister, who now runs it. And he's apparently doing the same thing for the Broadband Institute right now, although I don't really know what the Broadband Institute is. So he's perfectly capable, it appears, and certainly, as he says, of getting his hands dirty. But he's a smart guy who knows a lot about this business, and I think he will enhance our ability to talk policy a little bit, too. I mean, he would like to do that, and that's of appeal to him, and he knows enough to help us think about that, which I think is all to the good. But I don't think he knows he's a one-man band. We probably will try to get him an executive assistant or some kind of office manager support or something like that, but he's not going to have a cast of thousands to do all the grunt work while he's thinking great thoughts. So I appreciate the point. I end up feeling like it's fine, on that issue.
My question was very similarly along the lines of Commissioner Cameron, and I'm just wondering if Mr. McGee is in fact understanding of the fact that this would be, as I just say, getting to the nitty-gritty of unglamorous, perhaps, activities. So if you could just expound a little bit for my benefit on whether he understands and is that piece.
Yeah.
And he's willing to.
I ask him specifically about that, if I can. He said he thinks he has the demonstrated capacity to be both a front and a back end person. That the work that he's done demonstrates that he can do the back end unglamorous work. His present boss tells me that he's a roll up your sleeves type guy. He's not looking for the limelight. He's not trying to be out front. He likes being anonymous, likes doing the. He drafted those two statement of works that I gave you for the contracts with the governor's office. He drafted those, so he said if you were looking merely for a director of operations who didn't know anything about gaming, there'd be no point in getting me. There are other people around who are better operations people. And in fact, I think you spoke to one who's a senior operations person, but knew nothing about gaming. But as long as you like somebody who can roll their sleeves up and know something about gaming, that he thinks is a benefit. And he's frank to say that he is interested, he likes what we're doing, and he's interested in seeing if there's a possibility long-term. And, I think if there were no possibility long-term, he would be less interested in coming in for a few months and turning right around and going right back out again. But, he realizes this is a chance to get to know us and a chance for us to get to know him, and he's willing to do that. By the way, one thing I did not mention, but it's very important, he would not get a raise. He would be paid exactly what he's being paid now. We would just transfer him over. I don't even know technically how we would do it. Probably we will just pay the agency for his salary for this period of time. But there would be no additional benefits, no pay raise, anything like that. It would be just the same. Neither he nor I nor anybody thought it would be appropriate to give him a pay raise for this. And he also said that he was, apropos of your point, he said he would not do this if he couldn't return to housing and economic development too, because he realizes this is sort of a crapshoot. And so, those were his reactions.
Well taken. No, I just to expound on his resume, which speaks to his qualifications. I concur that he's had tremendous, very relevant experience and in many aspects of this job. So I think he's a tremendous candidate.
Okay, great. Anything else? Maybe we should, I think we do want a motion on this one. Somebody? Bruce,
Sure.
you want to make a?
I would move that the commission name Stanley McGee, current Assistant Secretary for Policy and Planning at the Executive Office of Housing and Community Development, is the Acting Executive Director of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission, subject to the issues that you raised regarding working out the financial transaction.
To start as quickly as possible.
To start as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Great. I think it's a terrific choice. I think we're lucky. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, second on our agenda is the Public Information Officer, and this one is one that I've been taking the lead on. The process, I think everybody knows this, but just to reiterate this, we ask Karen Schwartzman and she asked Hank Shaffrin, formerly of Bingham McCutcheon, the two of them to effectively do this search for us, Hank and Karen. They got a lot. We did this as a real search. I mean, we felt this is one that we should take the time to do right. It was posted. We searched around aggressively for candidates. We got a lot of candidates. Hank and Karen winnowed the resumes down to 14, interviewed all 14. The two of them interviewed all 14, I think. They winnowed it down to 2 finalists. At last week's meeting, you all empowered me to make a decision, to interview them and make a decision if I felt like there was a decision to be made. Otherwise, I would come back to you. I interviewed both of them. I've thought long and hard. I've talked to references about both of them, and I come down feeling like Elaine Driscoll, who is now the give you her exact title. You've got this resume, but she's the Director of Communications for the Boston Police Department. I talked to 2 of her former commissioner bosses, Commissioner O'Toole and Commissioner Evans, and they both were absolutely, yes, Davis, Ed Davis, sorry. Evans when I was with Kevin White. And they both were incredibly high on her. Commissioner Davis, said, my only reluctance is I'd hate to lose her. She'll be really impossible to replace. She's distinctive in her ability to deal with crisis stuff. You can imagine what they go through all the time. We think we have crises, they've got them in spades, but she's also a really thoughtful planner about proactively figuring out how an organization, in this case BPD, and in the future the Mass Gaming Commission, can build appropriate outreach tools, really establish the reputation that we're trying to of being transparent and fair and participatory. She's very up to date on social media tools. I don't have to tell you her resume, you've got it in front of you. But I think she's a superstar. She's really terrific, and I'm happy to talk more about her. But I feel completely comfortable. And I've talked with both Hank and Karen about this too, and I think they probably would come down on the same. I know Karen would come down in the same place, and I think Hank probably would too. So we're unanimous. There are no issues. There are no soft spots. Each of these hires, just for the record, are subject to background checks. Because of each of their backgrounds, I don't think there's much to check, but we will do the financial background checks. So these will be subject to background checks, as all of our hires will be. But subject to that, I don't have any reservations at all about recommending Elaine. She will take the job. We have not talked with her yet about salary. She's making $107,000 now, and she has some perks that we probably cannot provide her, like a car. So we haven't closed that loop, but my guess would be it would be a little above that, is what we would give her a small raise. That's, what I'm guessing, what I'm thinking at this point. So I have no reservations at all recommending her to you, but I'm happy to talk about it or do whatever.
Just a comment, Mr. Chair, that this is a critical position in a large police department, really critical, fast-moving, issues every single day. So, and I also checked, when I saw her resume, I was not involved in interviewing. I've never met this person, but I did check a couple of
good.
law enforcement colleagues who just rave about this person.
Great.
Just top shelf. So I was very pleased to see this in the package today, and I hear nothing but the highest praise for this individual.
Great.
Just looking at her resume, I do like the fact that she has executed some strategies towards engaging the public using social media, which I think is what we're all looking for in terms of keeping this process transparent and participatory. But I think picking up on Commissioner Cameron's point is a lot of what this person is going to be dealing with is very sensitive information. A lot of future gaming commission responsibilities are going to revolve around licensure and law enforcement. And I think having somebody who has that background dealing with the sensitive nature of a lot of these issues, it seems to me she brings the right qualifications to the job.
I actually hadn't thought about that, but it's but it's obvious. But so much of our work will be one sort of law enforcement / compliance / oversight regulation or another. A sensitivity to that is a real benefit. I hadn't even really thought about that, but I think that's right. Commissioner?
Just a very minor point for the record. The use of the car in the law enforcement and may not really be considered a perk, and it could also apply to us at some point in the future. So
because of the nature of her job. Sorry, I didn't mean to use perk disparagingly or prejudicially. Thank you for clarifying.
Just a very minor point.
Yeah.
But I also, on the larger point, I think her experience is really impressive based on her resume here and what you describe of the process that our Karen and Hank helped us conduct here is also very important. I'm very comforted by the numbers, just by the sheer interviewing 14 people that rose to the occasion and selecting from that group of people is very comforting. So,
this is just for the record. This is an issue that is important to me and it's important to the commission. We were very aggressive also in trying to find candidates of color because, as you know, I think that's something that we are going to make sure that we are attentive to. We weren't able to find the right candidates, but we were very aggressive. And if there were an affirmative action office looking over our shoulder, we would have complied with all of the intent there. There was something else I was going to say, but I've forgotten what it was. Oh, well, I'll speak to that when we get done with this. Anything else? So, again, do we want to have a motion? Commissioner, you want to?
Yep, let me make a motion to extend an offer to Elaine Driscoll for the position of Director of Communications, subject to negotiating a salary that's acceptable to both the organization and herself.
Second the motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. I think that's a great move. What I was going to say is I'm mindful of the fact that some people watching us might be saying, don't you guys sit right next door to each other? Why are you talking about this as if you've never heard of Elaine Driscoll? You've never heard of Elaine Driscoll. And this is this weird environment that we live in where we may not, by the open meeting law, talk amongst ourselves about practically anything, but for sure about anything that is significant like this. And so we're trying to figure out, as we do our work, so Gail, our Commissioner Cameron and Commissioner Zuniga, I think, found out about her this morning when you got her resume, right? So it's an odd way to do business, but it's what we're doing. So if it seems weird to you that, yes, we all work together in our same office on a full-time basis and we're talking about these things like we never heard of it before, that's why it is. And there will be other such oddities as we go along here. Okay, there is a second issue on the PIO, Public Information Officer topic. Commissioner Zuniga, you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's, as you all know, the Office of the Governor did the procurement of Karen Schwartzman and Polaris as when only Chairman Crosby was appointed by the Commission. That is essentially an emergency procurement, and as a housekeeping item, we should sign and execute a contract for that procurement. And the best thing that I see as relevant is to tally up the hours that have been expended, designate a time in the near future where a director of communication comes in and execute a contract for the hourly rate that she has been billing us for that amount. There's so
retroactively, in effect, execute a contract.
Yes.
For the time she starts through, say, when Elaine Driscoll starts.
Correct.
And then.
So that would be really just a housekeeping item that I think is very important. However, we also should contemplate a second piece, which is her role going forward, especially as a transition begins to occur. She has suggested a number of hours that we should consider, but because of her role, I believe this would be appropriate to have this be done on a sole source basis. The procurement should be done on a sole source basis. The business case, according to the regulations for sole sourcing, needs to be articulated in writing. And I don't have that for you today, but I can have that in the very near future, as if with your permission and appointment, I conduct those conversations with Karen to execute a second contract for that transition period. That would suffice and comply with all the procurement regulations and would allow us to have the proper contracting documentation as well. I would note a couple of things. She has been billing us on a deeply discounted basis, essentially 2/3 of her regularly billing rate, which she has proposed that as a way to continue that would, in a transition form, that could be done as well. Yep.
So I thought it was half.
Half? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Yep. Even yeah. Thank you.
Well, go ahead. We finished?
Anyway, no, yeah, that was essentially the conversation really is to execute those two pieces of contracting documents.
This is an example of the commissioners doing staff work. Ordinarily, we would not be doing stuff like this.
Yep.
But thank you, and it's important that we get this done right. Karen and I talked about with this when she first came on board, that this was going to be a short-term gig. If she were interested in staying on board as a full-time employee, she would have been at the top of the pile. She's not willing to give up her own practice to do that. So it was understood that we would come to this juncture at some point if we felt we needed a full-time person, which we did. I think that Elaine should be involved in that conversation, and I'm sure Karen would be fine with that, and figure out, what that relationship would be. I will just say also for the record that Ms. Schwartzman, you have been irreplaceable, and you are a great professional in this environment. You know, personally, I couldn't have done it. I would have made more mistakes than I've made without your help. Would that Elaine Driscoll can do as much for us as you have done. And I would love to keep you made the background, you know, your ethics commission background, working as an ethics investigator for 5 years, you know, has helped tremendously, and it gives her a sensitivity to these issues that is really helpful. And I hope Elaine can do that. But I would, personally, I'd love to figure out a way to keep Karen involved in some appropriate way, but I think Elaine ought to be crucial in that conversation, and if the upshot of that is that there's some continuing role, I think that would be great.
Right. Which I would just emphasize, then the piece about executing a contract, the first piece, we should look to, you know, get that done sooner rather than later.
Great. Well, I don't think we need a motion for that, but if
We
you can
don't.
just go
No,
ahead.
it's-
Anybody think less well of Karen?
Just to say.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Schwartzman. Other hiring needs, thank you very much for doing that. It's great for keeping an eye on that. 3C, other hiring needs. I think this is just informational. We will be posting, I don't know who all knows this, soon, right? Like tomorrow, we'll be posting 4 jobs, a sort of administrative manager, office manager, admin, high-end admin kind of person, 2 executive assistants, and a receptionist. We may not necessarily need all those people, but we want them in the pipeline. We want the searches done so we can be ready to move ASAP. And we probably will want to add at least one of those persons on to help Stan McGee when he comes on board, and maybe Elaine as well. So cast your net, you know, if anybody knows anybody, this is the time. And we're going to, I hope folks are getting a sense that we're starting to kick into a different gear now. Having Stan and Elaine on board is going to be an extraordinary help, and then adding these other support staff, it's going to start to change the nature of our lives quite a bit, which will be nice. Anything else? Other hiring?
Well,
Yes.
as one of those, as part of those hirings, I'd like to make sure that we keep an eye on and post in the posting and in the whatever we receive, to look for experience with accounts payable, bookkeeping, whether that's one or more. I don't think we need more than one at this point, but some of the clerical relative to the finances that I am seeing could be very valuable in what we can do. So if we're posting, in addition to our website, if we're posting somewhere else as part of the HRD, is that Commonwealth Employment Opportunity, that would be great, because a lot of candidates could really be drummed up with very relevant experience from those.
Is this one of these jobs including some kind of bookkeeping expertise or experience? Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Should we rethink that? Is it time to get a bookkeeper
Well,
as opposed to somebody who's going to do that sort of out of their hip pocket while they're doing a bunch of other stuff?
Well, I think in the spirit of what you mentioned, that we are posting and may not necessarily have to hire somebody right away.
Right.
But by the time maybe
Right.
Mr. McGee comes in and can also weigh in, I think it's never too late to start
Right.
benefiting from experience relative to accounts payable, the state accounts payable system, MARS. We have to comply with a lot of controller type procedures. They've been very helpful to us, but it's also understood that there will be a phase with them.
Right.
And so to the extent that we can rely on their help for an ongoing, it's not that critical, but we should be mindful that we need to eventually have some of that expertise in-house.
Okay, well, that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's really up to you and
Yeah.
Janice, you know, whenever you think it's time. If it's
Yeah.
time to to start the process going now? So
Yeah.
we've got somebody in a month or two,
Yep. I think
I'm
that's,
game with that. It's up to you as far as,
I think it's the latter. I think
Yeah.
it's never too early then to get that.
so maybe that's a fifth one rather than.
Okay.
Any other thoughts? Do we, any other needs? I guess we'll get to one when we get to our friends, the Racing Commission. The gaming consultants, I put in your packages, is that the next one? Yeah. Where is it? Just the chart that Kathleen O'Toole sent me, that is the product of the work going on between Spectrum and Michael and Carol. And this now lays out the major topic areas and the responsibilities, which firm will take the lead on them. They also attached a blank Gantt chart, which doesn't do much for us, but it shows what they're in the process of working out there. I think they're together now and are continuing to work on this. So we're already using them. I've talked with several of them, a couple of them, about various issues now, not just on negotiating their contract, which is something they have to do on their own nickel, but on actually getting their substantive help on some work we're doing, which I think we will be able to pay them for in due time when we execute this contract. So it's moving along pretty quickly, and I would hope that within, possibly by the end of this week, they'll really be ready to finalize a statement of work. Commissioner Zuniga said he would take the lead on getting the contracts packaged properly. But I think we're getting awfully close to getting started with them in a formal way, and informally, we're already going. I don't know that there's anything really to talk about here, but you're welcome to if you've got.
Mr. Chair, one comment.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've been doing, and we've asked the state police to assist with, is some background investigations for everyone we hire. And I spoke to the lieutenant in charge, who tells me that they anticipate those completed for the law firm as well as the two gaming consultants by the end of this week.
Great. Great. Again, I think the gaming consultants and the law firm, for that matter, are probably as clean as you're going to find, just because of the nature of their work. But we should go through this as well. So that's good. Thank you.
I have a question relative to gaming consultant contract negotiation, and as you pointed out last time, the RFR, as originally stated or as originally drawn out, stipulated a maximum amount, and both consultants came under that amount with a proposal, of course, assuming that they would be doing 100% of what we asked them to do in what the governor's office envisioned as in the RFR. Now that they have two, or we have divided in some fashion some of those tasks, has there been any discussion or consideration whether their cost proposals should be revised? I'm not expecting that they would be halved. In other words, because we have two, because there is reasonable to expect that there will be some coordination hours, etc. But I'm also not expecting that they would be exactly what they proposed when they assumed that they would be doing all of the activities that were listed. So is there an update on that, or is that part of what we need to continue negotiating?
At the moment, there's no discussion of there anything other than the $500,000 cap, and they're each going to get their share, whatever they just determine.
Okay.
So within that cap, there's never been any discussion about going higher.
Okay.
It is
in the aggregate.
Correct. Right. Right. In the aggregate, there is a. This is expected to be basically a 4-month job, and I think their position is going to be that we can spend that $500,000 in that 16 weeks, and at the end of that, if we need further help, which we probably will, we're going to need to do whatever we need to do to get that. So, but I think for the work product that was envisioned in the RFP, for the time being, we are capping it. Could we change that? If we felt that it was going to be a $650,000 job rather than $500,000, can we do that?
Sure. We just need to look at what they proposed originally, what they assumed they were going to be doing. In other words, the basis for their cost proposal, and what the activities may end up being, because circumstances change, if you will.
But just because the RFP said was going to be capped at 500, when we execute a contract, we could make it more if we felt we needed to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Again, subject to the detailed understanding of what they proposed on,
Right.
and what circumstances changed based on the proposals. In other words, they may have assumed that they were going to do A, B, and C, but if we come here and say, now we want you to do D in addition to those, why,
Right.
that's the piece that we need to negotiate.
Right.
And to that end, frankly, we are asking them to coordinate with another party, and that clearly may not have been, part of their considerations, which was part of my point.
Right.
There could be additional hours there for coordination. Hopefully not much,
Yeah.
but let's realistically, they now have to coordinate with a party that they were not envisioning originally.
Good, that's fair. And they also, I think, are planning, our law firm is very local in its focus.
Yep.
And there's some legal work that may be required to be done by Michael and Carol in particular, that's, the national regulatory environment kind of stuff. So that could have an impact on that too. But we should think about, when we do negotiate this contract, we should think about what's going to happen after 6 weeks. Both, what's the number now, and is that rational? Is that appropriate? But also what's going to happen after 16 weeks. So we might want to keep the door open to be able to extend it. If they're good, I'm sure we're going to need their help for a while longer. Okay, good.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's anything else on the gaming consultants? The outside counsel, Commissioner McHugh has been handling that. They are farther along even than the gaming consultant. They've got a scope of work pretty well drafted, I think. And they are doing some work, but I can't really report much on that, and we'll wait till we hear from Commissioner McHugh when he gets back on that. As far as permanent meeting date and location, I spoke to this a little bit when it comes to the issue of the streaming. We will be meeting every Tuesday at 1 o'clock for the foreseeable future, with other events stuck in, like the one that's coming up on May 3rd. We don't yet know where. We're trying to figure out in a place which is cost efficient, which has the technological capacity, which is flexible in terms of size of audience, because we never know when a lot of people are going to come. And we're having a harder time matching all those criteria than we had hoped that we would. So we're not able to announce a permanent place yet, but we'll keep working on that. Anything else on that? Finance budget update, Commissioner, do you have anything?
Well, not really, except for what I already had mentioned relative to the need to execute a contract with Polaris.
Yeah.
And so I already kind of spoke about that.
Okay.
There's no update otherwise.
Anybody else? All set? Procurement?
Procurement, we, as you know, even prior to the last meeting, we posted the executive search firm, RFR. We also sent an email blast, if you will, to a number of firms that we know of with a reference to our website and our Compass, because only in Compass they can obtain certain forms that we're asking them to obtain. We've had some inquiries, which is it's good, it's exciting, and the response deadline is May 11th.
May 11th, okay.
May 11th.
You said the end of the month.
What Commissioner Stevens was referring to is the process will be all completed.
Oh, okay.
Completed by
Review,
then.
evaluation
great.
by the end of the month.
Great, okay.
The responses are due May 11th, so
Great.
that's our next milestone.
Okay.
I have also reached out to Treasurer's Office and Governor's Office for assistance, as we discussed last week, relative to the evaluation of those eventual responses.
Great. Anything else? Okay, number 6. The first issue on the agenda is Commissioner Cameron's on the May 3rd event, which is going to be right next door It's all ready to go.
Yes.
Why don't you give us an update?
Be happy to, Mr. Chair. We've included the latest draft of, and we're pretty close to the final draft. This is the agenda for this coming Thursday, the event.
Was that in our packet? I didn't get
Yes.
that. Do you have extra? I don't have that. She's got one. Is that a spare? No. I got one. Thanks.
Do we have any extras? Thank you. Thank you, Brandon. Thanks. So this is the latest draft. As you can see, I'll be giving some opening remarks. The location is here this Thursday. We're starting at 9 in the morning. We're opening the doors at 8:30 for sign-in. We've asked people to register online, and there's also an area where you can ask questions. So in advance of the forum, there's an opportunity to ask questions that we'll try to get as many of those questions answered as we can. We've also
Do we have any yet questions?
Yes, we have a number of questions relating to the educational forum.
And the number of people who have RSVP'd?
Yes, we're well over 100 at this point, and from those of us that have run these conferences in the past, and our chief of staff has great experience with this also. Many people will not register but will be attending. So it's not our intent to turn anyone away. We're trying to plan as best we can for room size. But it will be here. It will be Thursday. We have the president of the American Gaming Association will be giving us some remarks to start, and as you mentioned last week, some were not, some individuals were not thrilled with that, but I think it is important that we get an overall state of the industry. Mr. Fahrenkopf also wants to speak about worldwide regulatory reform and the National Center for Responsible Gaming. So those three topics, he'll be focusing his remarks.
And I sort of said this the other day, but I really just think for the record, we are a part of the gaming industry now. This is the major gaming association. He's not, just a lobbyist. He runs the industry association for an industry of which the people of Massachusetts, through their elected representatives, have decided we are part of.
Yes.
So we will be talking to a lot of people. We'll hear more about that.
Yes.
But I don't think there's any issue at all about having someone like this person come
Correct.
and talk about the industry.
He is a subject matter expert and a very good speaker.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be interesting for all of us to hear that perspective. We've decided to structure the day in panel discussions. I think that will give us the most benefit for the subject matter experts we're bringing in. They can discuss the topic and play off one another with their comments and their lessons learned. This is really an opportunity for all of us to learn from experts in the area and the lessons they've learned. The thing that one of the aspects that I think is really positive for us is the fact that this is a seasoned industry now, and there are lessons learned and best practices, and we'll be learning about some of those hard lessons learned and the evolution and where things are today, and I think that will help us tremendously. We're starting the morning with a panel called Determining Priorities, and that really is the new commission. What are the things that we should be most concerned about as we're in our fifth week of work? We've just started our 5th week of work as a commission, and what are the things that we should be paying attention to right away? We think we know some of those things, but it'll be interesting to hear from experts on when they started commissions in other jurisdictions. What are those things we should be paying attention to? The second panel is really going to give us information on okay, we tried this, it worked well, we ended up changing some things for these reasons. So those are the actual trial by error experiences that they have gone through. And when we're talking about panelists, we have prior commissioners from jurisdictions, we have executive directors, regulators, law enforcement officials, many of whom have served in numerous jurisdictions. I think what we're finding is this is a pretty small industry in that the experts are very well sought after, and they tend to move from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. They end up with a job they find more challenging, and they're willing to move somewhere else. So
we should keep our eye open for
I
candidates
think
for executive director.
that's important to talk to the individuals we're bringing in, because it will be a source of contacts for us to use moving forward. We will take a lunch break after our first two panels, and this building affords a food court, so those individuals who are attending will not have to leave if they don't choose to. The food court will be open to all of those in attendance. We start after lunch with a panel discussion, and this is really the nuts and bolts, before the doors open, the bidding process, the background investigations, the financial oversight, smart regulations. So really, these are the first things that we will be doing, and this may not be the sexy work, but it is. All of these topics we'll need to pay attention to immediately, and the experts that we brought in really are seasoned and have great oversight, whether it be the legal aspects, the financial aspects, or the day-to-day running of the commission. So those folks will talk to us about that. And then we're going to end the day with our enforcement responsibilities. And this starts right away for us with background investigations. What system are we going to set up? And there are many, many options. We can outsource. We can involve the state police to a great degree. We can hire from within to handle those. So we have lots of options we'll be considering, and these subject matter experts will be talking to us about that. The other thing we've asked these folks to talk about is crime. What's real and what's perceived in the industry, and what are their experiences in New Jersey and Pennsylvania and other jurisdictions in which they've worked. We also have individuals on the panel who have worked in Native American gaming. I think we're going to hear some of those differences, some of the perspective on Native American gaming. What we've done is used our consultants who are subject matter experts. They will be moderating for us. Other than the law enforcement panel, the chair was good enough to invite Sheriff Cabral from Suffolk County. She participated on a conference call with us this week. She was excellent, knowledgeable, really interested in the moving parts of enforcement.
Right.
Who does what? How do we collaborate? How do we work well together? And one of the most interesting new developments in law enforcement in general, but in particular in casino gaming, is the Fusion Center. All of the information is pumped into the Intelligence Center, Fusion Center for the region, and we end up with real-time information. If there's a scam happening in Las Vegas, we're going to know about it that day and look for certain trends. The Colonel of the State Police was very interested in that and making sure we incorporate that into the Fusion Center here in Massachusetts. So we'll be hearing about all of those things with a full day on Thursday. And I don't think you need to know we're working with flying them in, putting them up. All of these folks have volunteered their time to come in and help us out. So I am personally very grateful for their giving of their time to come in and do that for us. So we look forward to Thursday, Mr. Chair.
This is great. On Sheriff Cabral, she is really, I don't know if an expert, but really an aggressively interested law enforcement person in the business of law enforcement agencies collaborating or not. And one of the few criticisms of or not criticisms, but issues in our legislation is that who does what to whom relative to law enforcement and who's in charge is not at all clear. And I know she's interested, and she could easily be affected by this, but as an aside, she's really interested in how organizations can work together to maximize output and throughput, effectiveness. Is it, if we were to run over, so the idea is that they will be speaking to us, and behind us through the camera and whoever's in the room speaking to the public, we will be asking questions. Some of the questions will probably have come from the public. How long do you think, or have you given them, how long do they talk, and then how long is Q&A?
Yes, a piece I failed to mention, and you bring this up, we have gone high-tech. rather than answer questions directly from the public, we have a Twitter account so that individuals can text their questions in as the panelists are speaking, or beforehand if they choose. And
From the audience as well.
from the
some-
audience, we will have a desk in the back with a computer system set up where all those questions are taken, provided to the moderator. We are leaving that. We've asked them to leave at least 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. Obviously, we won't be able to get to every question, but at the moderator's discretion, they're going to answer as many as they can.
Okay. Because I could imagine that these could easily run over. I mean, they'll just the commissioner's questions, never mind everybody else's questions. And I don't know whether we need to think about how do we cushion that. If we can we cut lunch in half if we had to? You know, can we run over by 45 minutes?
We have discussed those issues
Okay.
with the moderators, but we've also challenged them to try to stay on.
Okay.
That is one of the challenges with a good moderator is to stay
Right.
within the time frame. So
Okay.
they're all going to try to do that as best as possible.
But it's more how much interest is generated from outside, you know. But if there can be some flexibility, you know, built in, if it turns out I mean, you'll basically be emceeing the whole thing, and if you feel like there's so much interest and so much stuff being talked about that you'd like to be able to expand it, you know, it would be useful to have a way to do that.
Well, we're ending at 3:30, so we really do have a little bit of time built in to run over, frankly.
We're ending at 3.
Well, yeah, 3, well, I guess we're building it in already, to be
Oh,
honest
all right,
with you.
okay.
And secondly, we are going to have other forums, so if we see a need, we realize we're just scratching the
Okay.
surface here. We realize we're not discussing all of the important issues around casino gaming, so I'd hate to have anyone look at this and say, well, we're not talking about A, B, or C. It's not that we don't think it's important, but these were the basic startup responsibilities of the commission.
Okay.
That's how these subjects were chosen. There are others that are very, very important. I know we're going to be dealing with some financial, rather economic development issues in a later forum. So there may be things that we look at here and say we need to pay more attention, and we may do that in a later forum.
Okay. I also don't want to raise expectations to the public that we can take their questions and then not be able to take any questions, you know, so
We'll be
ask.
answering some questions
Okay.
at the end of every panel, and the panelists are also going to make themselves available
Right, okay.
for those who may want to sidebar with them at a later point.
Okay, great.
This is a very minor point, but perhaps if we built a small break in the afternoon session, you know, the change of one panel into another panel may
Take a few
may
minutes.
take a few minutes, and to the end of your point.
Yeah, well, maybe that's in the 3:30, but maybe it's
Yeah.
1 o'clock to 2 and then 2:15.
We could do that.
2:15,
We could do that. We just,
It will take a few minutes to get one panel out and another panel up.
well,
so-
they'll be seated right in the front row, so
Yeah.
it won't take a lot of time, but I think we can, part of panel discussions are, it ran a little over, let's take a break now. Having the flexibility to do that is how this whole day is put together with.
Yeah.
So we'll,
Okay.
as we see fit, we'll do that. Thank you.
Well, this is great. I'm really glad you came up with this idea. Thank you. Anything else on this? So please join us May 3rd. Next is our second educational forum, which will be on economic development, and Commissioner Stebbins is marshaling that one.
Sure, just a quick update. We have narrowed down our date to June 14th, which is a Thursday, kind of hopefully keeping in line with our forum that kicks off this Thursday. We've confirmed a number of speakers that were very involved in the lead up to the passage of the bill in terms of studies that were done. Spectrum Innovation Group, Professor Barrow from UMass, kind of re-examining their work now that the bill has been passed. I know some of those studies did a lot of their work based on certain scenarios. Obviously, the bill lays out now one scenario of up to 3 casinos and the slot parlor. Some of those were done a few years ago. It's going to be interesting to get their perspective on whether the economics have changed any of our expectations going forward. The second panel is going to be assessing and reviewing the information we're going to need. We're bringing in some people that really, to this point, may not necessarily have been involved in the studies and the work that was done, again, leading up to the passage of the gaming bill. Professor Martin Romiti from UMass Donahue Institute is a confirmed speaker. He did a lot of analysis. Is Commissioner Zuniga, and I found out last week on gaming in Missouri. Stephen Norton from the New Hampshire Center for Public Policy is confirmed. He was doing a lot of research work during New Hampshire's recent discussion about whether they would add gaming to some of their facilities in New Hampshire. PricewaterhouseCoopers, which does an annual survey of the gaming industry, has confirmed their participation, even though they haven't identified a speaker for us. And we're looking at a couple of additional names. We have kind of invitations outstanding, but no confirmation yet now that we've narrowed down the date based on all of the speakers we wanted to have around the table, their availability. I think we'll be able to lock down some of these additional speakers. And so, just as a reminder, we're going to be at Quinsigamond Community College in Worcester.
At 9 o'clock on June 14th?
Correct.
Okay. Are you thinking this is a half day at this point?
I'm thinking right now between two panels, it's a half day. I'd been toying with the idea of kind of an economic, additional economic impact piece as a third panel. Right now I'm focusing on nailing these two down. You know, if we need an additional, you know, continue the day, we can work towards that, or maybe even make that a separate session. I know you've had some thoughts about a mitigation
well, I'll do that one.
forum,
Yeah, I'm going to get to that one, yeah.
but maybe adding the economic, again, some of the economic impact and mitigation around you know, the economy or the economic factors which the bill outlines, maybe adding that onto your day or not. But right now we've nailed down these two panels and kind of their discussion strategies at this point.
There is a school of thought that the research that's all done is in the tank, and I'm sure there are people who will never believe any research is legit. But do we have the ability? You know, are there constructive critics, not just people who are never going to accept anything that says there's a net gain from this, but are there constructive critics who we should hear from about whether we have the right people doing the research? Are there issues? Are there screwed up methodologies? Are there the wrong questions being asked? Is the trade-off analysis being done properly, et cetera? Is there somebody, is that part of the?
That's one person or multiple, one or two people that we're trying to add to that, reviewing the information that we need. We'll hear from people who have already done research. We'll hear, I'm hoping to add, confirm some folks that'll kind of give us a differing opinion as to what tools we should need. You know, we're balancing a line of, we don't want it to be an anti-gaming discussion, but we do want to invite some, you know, objective criticism as to whether we have all the right tools or not when, you know, ultimately we're considering gaming license applications.
Right.
Let me speak a little bit to the meeting we had with Mr. Romiti of the Donahue Institute, which in the meeting he highlighted a very interesting and sophisticated model that they call the gravity model for figuring out just who patronizes the casinos that already exist in Missouri. At the time they were trying to figure out how to license one license that they had revoked. And my point is simply that they developed the model, they studied the proposals, and there is, of course, and that happened in the past, so there is clearly a case study now that can be corroborated against, or, you know, to the assumptions that were made on that model. So I think that this theory with the case study is a very intriguing piece for us to consider because, of course, they know the results over in Missouri. Now, the critical piece for Massachusetts, for us, will be how much is transferable, what assumptions go into their model that may or may not apply to the Commonwealth, where they applied in Missouri, or anywhere else, really. Missouri is just one example. There's several others out there. So in the same venue of what Commissioner Cameron was describing relative to the expertise of others out there, when I think the best benefit comes from merging the theory with the history and the case study that's out there.
Yeah. Is that consistent with what you were part of that same
Yep.
conversation, right?
Yeah, and obviously it's, what was interesting about the presentation we received about the research done in Missouri is that, they have concentrations of casinos that have opened, several in the Kansas City area, several in the St. Louis area, so they're kind of circles of where they were drawing from. There was a lot of overlap. Obviously, Massachusetts is a little bit different because we are only licensing up to 3, and the slots parlor also, but I think it'll give us some good tools to use when we're considering the applications as to, and obviously people from the gaming, businesses are market savvy as well, but I think it'll give us some good tools in terms of really looking what the impact's going to be.
Right. And as I've begun to think about this more, we're getting into this, I was asking last week the question, what do we need to know and do we know it? But there's a caveat to that too, which is what do we need to know in order to get the RFPs out the door? Mm-hmm. And what can we learn after the RFPs are out the door? Because the first one is a major gating item on the process. The other is less. We've got time on that. So beginning to start thinking, I think this is something we can ask our consultants too, is thinking about how to position the cash upfront payment. I don't know whether we can get the RFP out there without having pretty well-informed opinion about, but maybe I'm wrong about that, but it seems to me like you'd want to know, what you were trying to get out of each of these regions in an upfront payment. We have a minimum, mandated minimum, but we can go higher than that if we think that's appropriate, and other states have gone way higher than that. Certainly, we're supposed to offer an opportunity on the slots license first. How does that impact? I think we definitely need to know that, because I don't know how anybody would bid, how a casino is going to put together a proposal without knowing whether we're going to drop a slots parlor next door to them. But again, I'm just beginning to think about this, but I think trying to figure out, there's stuff we need to know soon, and there's stuff we can learn later on. And figuring out what that is important, I think, in this process. If as much as you can do it within the open meeting law context, as you begin to pull these together and to fine tune the content of the panels, I'd be interested in being a part of that and brainstorming on that, because really, I want to make sure we really get this right and use this time well. And it seems to me like there may well be more than a 1 hour, 1.5 hour panel to talk about the issue of the economic impact. But we'll see as it begins to come together. Yeah.
Just one comment on that. Knowing Commissioner Stebbins was putting this together, I did chat with some of the subject matter experts coming in this week, and they will all be prepared to talk to you about the experiences in New Jersey, in Pennsylvania, and other places around economic development.
Great.
That's great. Okay. Anything else on that topic? We had talked last week about, originally we were going to put community mitigation and compulsive gambling into this day, but we decided that's too much, and I was tasked with trying to start working on a community mitigation / compulsive gambling educational forum, and I'm going to try to do it in the next 30 days. I'd like to do it before the end of the month if I can. I have talked with Kathleen Norbert, Kathleen somebody, Norbert, who, apropos of your point about we don't want to reopen the door to the gambling debate, a lot of the people that I've talked to who were opposed to expanded gaming have made the conscious decision not to keep fighting that fight, but to try to have a constructive influence on how it's done. Kathleen is one of those. So are the people from the compulsive gambling organization that you and I met with. Right. And so I don't think we're running the risk of reopening old wounds or old debates which are no longer relevant. But she is willing to participate. MAPC is willing to participate. She's put me in touch with the Worcester Regional Planning Association, who apparently has done some pretty good work on that. So I think I've got the makings of the community mitigation group pretty well. And we also have the makings, I think, of the compulsive gambling. The compulsive gambling people were really good. They're interested in being involved. So I think we can I haven't figured out where or when, but I think that'll be the next one coming down the pike. And I'll do as quickly as I think we possibly can. It'd be nice to get, I think these are sort of our three big bring in information, but without the public opportunity to speak. When we get our director of communications on board, I think, we're going to say, all right, now it's time to start doing our listening tours around the Commonwealth where we talk to people about stuff. But these two big ones these three big ones are the sort of starting point. And if we can get them all done before the summer, that would be great, which is what I'll try to do for the one I'm doing. Anything else about all that? Racing Commission.
Limited report today, Mr. Chair, but we did have a meeting last Friday in the Comptroller's office. We're still trying to iron out the proper language for the ISA in order to facilitate these payments that we're obligated to make from the racing stabilization account. Because it's transferring from one account to another, there were some issues around language and exact numbers. So we had an informative meeting on Friday, and that process is moving as quickly as we can help move it along. I also met with members of the law firm Anderson and Krieger that we hired to discuss the legal aspects of the transfer of responsibilities from the Racing Commission, which is now housed in professional licensure, to the Gaming Commission. So those were some productive discussions. And I also had a meeting with Casey Atkins, who is the acting director through professional licensure, to discuss the actual contracts of employees. We're getting close to the date, May 20th. Those employees are, of course, anxious to know what their status is. So what we've, not knowing the exact date of when we'll have this transfer of responsibilities, but being mindful of employees, we've had discussions about how we extend those contracts through this racing season. We'll need those folks through the racing season and probably beyond, but just to do this in an orderly fashion, how we go about extending those contracts. So we're working on those three issues as quickly as we can, and to make this transfer.
This is in the context of going down two parallel
It
paths.
is.
We have to assume that we will take it over, so we're ready to do it. If it happens, it may turn out this gets postponed, but
right.
There's no way for us.
But either way, that racing season is upon us, and those employees will be needed, and
right.
The valuable employees, and so we're looking to whatever appropriate mechanism to extend those contracts.
This is the full-time employees, or these are the consultants?
Those are both sets of employees. The 12 full-time, the 23 contract employees. We're looking at two different mechanisms to extend employment beyond May 20th.
For the consultants and the full-time?
Correct.
Right. The full-time is, maybe you spoke to this, but are we, if we take it over, are we going to be able to keep them on in some kind of a contingent, temporary, conditional mode?
Those are the mechanisms we're looking
at
as we speak. We just started those discussions to what is the best plan moving forward. Okay. So we're looking at that now. we've brought that to the attention of the law firm we're working with, so
Okay.
we're
'Cause
moving
it certainly
ahead.
seems to me if we do take it over, that we would not want to be locked into the same folks for a long, long time. We don't know anything about them. Presumably, they're doing their jobs well, but we may want to reorganize stuff, and we just don't have any
We
idea.
want that flexibility.
We really have to have that
So,
flexibility
which
if we
is-
possibly can.
Which is why I use the term mechanism. How do we facilitate that
Yeah,
in a
okay.
way that, and we're dealing with a labor situation where there are 3 different bargaining unions that these individuals are involved with. So we're trying to simplify something that, we don't want to make it complicated, but we want to facilitate it in a way that makes sense. So
Right.
we're exploring those options. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Or I can just,
Should we just let's just take a break?
if you don't mind.
Yeah. Let's come back to that, but let's take a 5-minute break.
Sure.
And we will be
Sure.
literally back in 5 minutes. We were talking about the Racing Commission.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's all I had. Those 3 points, the update from last week, and
Right,
I have
okay.
nothing further at this time.
And on the issue of the postponement, we have made, Commissioner McHugh and I principally have made our position known that if the interest is in expediting our primary business, which is the licensing business, it probably would be advisable not to have us try to take over the Racing Commission. And it's now in the hands of the legislature and the governor, and if they want to postpone it, they will. If they don't, they won't. And there's not much more we can do on that. So I think you're doing the right thing. Unfortunately, we just have to keep focusing. What about the search for the consultant?
We're waiting for final responses. That will be wrapped up this week, and then we're hoping to have a recommendation by next week's meeting.
Okay,
Discuss it and move forward.
great. Do you have what you need there? I mean, do you have the resources that you need? I mean, assuming that we're going to take it over, which we have no choice but to assume that.
We do not have those resources, but it's because we don't have a definitive answer. It's premature to talk about hiring folks because we would not need them if we don't take it over. So we're moving ahead. We're doing what we have to do. We'll be prepared. It'll be a scramble, but we'll be prepared if we need to be by the 20th. And I'm hoping for a resolution as soon as we can possibly have it. So
Yeah, I've said, that if it's going to happen, it should happen soon because the gain is not happening because we're having to do it all anyway. But anyway, so we'll see. Okay, well, thank you very much for hanging in on that one. Anything else on racing? Interagency relations, internet gaming. Is there anything, Commissioner?
No, there's no update from the last update. There's an upcoming scheduled meeting for around May 20th, I believe.
Is that the next task force?
Yes, that's the next task force.
I was thinking about maybe going to that meeting with you.
Okay.
Because I think it's important to put that issue on the table that we talked about before, that we think it's important to look at this whole thing holistically so that it's not a turf battle between the Gaming Commission and the lottery, and we're trying to figure out what generates the most money for the Commonwealth pursuant to whatever. So, and I want to make sure that the task force, everybody in the task force really gets that, and maybe having me come and have us both there to sort of make that point might be worth considering.
Yep. I agree, and I will make a note of confirming the next task force
So
meeting.
is it, what day did you say? Or you're going to send me a note?
I'll send
Okay.
you a note, but it's I believe it's tentatively scheduled for May 20th.
We probably should give them, if I am going to do it, we probably ought to give them a heads up.
Yep.
If you're okay with that, I think
absolutely.
I'd like to do that, okay.
Yep.
And this is another variable, Commissioner Stebbins, that it would be nice to have somebody be able to, I don't know who knows very much about this, but to what extent does internet gaming change the equations, and what do people in the industry think our positions ought to be on what happens to internet gaming, where it's done? I mean, we don't know. So it would be, again, I think our consultants can probably help us with this. As much as anybody knows, they probably know, but we need, some real data to help us figure out where we think this thing ought to, this new phenomenon ought to go, and where does it most advance the Commonwealth's objectives.
Well, the internet gaming piece is something that we've kind of put into our rough outline as to updating, the recent gaming studies as well as ongoing economic research. And, Price Waterhouse in their gaming study almost did a big section on that, calling it the elephant in the room. What do we do with internet gaming? What age population is it attracted to? It's people younger than 35, hopefully legally that can do it. But it's how's it going to impact casino gaming going forward?
Right.
So again, we, having somebody from Price Waterhouse at this forum, as well as talking to the people that did the other studies, Innovation Spectrum and Professor Barrow from UMass will hopefully give us some thoughts on that.
Okay, great. The tribal gaming situation, I don't think there is much to report. We have said that we've made it very clear that we think it's appropriate that we be kept up to speed as decisions begin to get made. Any decisions that will begin to get made that will have significant impact on us are things we got to know about as they're going along. But that's we've made that point. I think that the negotiating team understands that. Having Stan McGee in our presence will add to that awareness and sensitivity. So I guess that's about all there is on that one. Anything else on any of those two topics? Or strategic considerations. This we have been talking about things we can do to expedite this whole process. Part of it is thinking about what economic data do we really need to know before the RFP goes out, and what can we wait on. But also, it has been proposed to us that we bifurcate what we had been referring to as the RFP process into a two-step process, and that the first step be basically a pre-qual process that anybody who intends to submit a proposal or intends to try to submit a proposal would be vetted by the commission on their financial integrity and their integrity. I mean, on their financial strength and on their integrity. And it could be as much as a 6-month-long process, but an awful lot of this would move much more quickly than that. And if we found cases where we were going to not qualify people, not permit people to bid, not because of the particulars of their proposal or their financial bid to us or anything, or because of something about their inherent in their operational record or their finances, that would save everybody a lot of time and money. And I think it's a great idea, and we've looked into it now quite a bit. I think I did distribute just a quick outline from the consultants about how that process would work, and I've talked with them now about it, and even as we're negotiating our contract, I've asked them to begin to think about pulling together a document, and this refers to a sort of a standard industry document which does ask the essential financial and integrity questions. And we will get that and think that through and figure out if there's anything else we need to know. And then we can probably get that process going soon, maybe even before the month is over, which would be a big step towards moving the process down the road. And as I say, to the extent that we can make relatively quick decisions, like in the next 30, 60, 90 days, about people that we are not going to pre-qualify, that will help the towns, help everybody, and take that step out of the process after the fact. So I think you're probably familiar with this, I guess whoever talked with the consultants, but any thoughts about that? I mean, I think it's the right thing to do.
I agree, and I have a couple of considerations for us, for discussion purposes, really. Perhaps an advantageous approach to this two-step process is that the first RFQ, if you will, not be geographically driven. In other words, or at least we should consider whether anybody wants any license from this commission as one of the considerations of this RFQ, or whether we want to tier or segregate essentially what we have, which is a type 1 or a type 2 license, and whether we want, the casinos and the slots parlor, and whether we want a separate RFQ and RFP process for each of those.
For both.
For both. One thing that I just thinking out loud a little bit, but if we keep it general, we could benefit from whomever may be out there who is interested but may not want to compromise land dealings that they may have, because they don't have them yet. An operator who may be interested in keeping options open, if you will.
But who may not want to surface the fact that they're interested,
They're interested in a particular location. They may be interested in a license eventually, but not necessarily in a particular location.
I don't see why I would have to say anything about
Just speculating
right.
a little bit. But, or just to put it more simply, we need to consider whether this two-step process would have to be done for each of the licenses. My initial
1 and 2.
1 and 2.
Yeah.
Slots parlor and casino.
Yeah.
They clearly have, at least what the legislation and some of the reports contemplated, was that the slots parlor would be a lot more straightforward to let out, that RFQ, that it's more expeditious. So
Yeah.
we want to
Right.
commingle them, and then now we're in the critical path of the one that takes longer.
Yeah.
We could always pre-qualify everybody and then do the RFP separately.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
as
I
an
don't
option.
have an opinion on that. Is this topic something that will be covered in one of these?
Well, yes, because the bidding process and the different options around a bidding
Right.
process that is included. So this particular piece of it will be covered
Okay.
by our subject matter experts.
That'll give us a first bite at the apple in 2 days, and then I think we can see, because I'd be inclined to pull in whoever the best people are on our consultant team soon, and sit, in the next few days, and sit down with them and say, really understand this. I mean, there must be some pretty complicated issues about if there are corrupt practices investigations going on overseas with a company. Does that, but it's just an investigation, does that disqualify them? I don't know, that's pretty complicated. I mean, you would have maybe some kind of experience with this, but how do you do this?
Well, we'll have those options.
Yeah.
That's the, I think one of the positive things is, the options will be presented to us, and frankly, on that particular issue, jurisdictions have looked at it differently. They've been licensed in certain jurisdictions without looking at the business practices overseas, and then denied licenses in other jurisdictions based on practices overseas. So that'll be a decision we'll have to make. But I agree with you, Mr. Chair, that this is a process that it makes a lot of sense to me, this pre-qualification process, rather than go to the full RFP, start with the qualifications. In reading through this, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we should, again, I don't think we really need a motion on this, but I think that we should move. We'll talk about it a little bit with folks tomorrow or Thursday, and then immediately thereafter maybe sit down. I'd like to do this really quickly. I think for one thing, I think give people a sense of comfort that we're really moving it as fast as we possibly can.
I think from, the municipalities that we've already started to hear from, many of them are weighing issues about costs associated with hiring their own person to represent them in negotiations. And, as we heard the other day, there's some communities which may have multiple proposals, but coming to a decision on whether we're going to do this or not, and doing it expeditiously, I think will obviously save some communities that are in this process, save them a lot of time, money, and effort. If they can realize that, somebody they might be dealing with may not be, what we would see as a qualified applicant. But, I know that, the notes here say the statute, contemplates such a process, but the way it reads under Section 12 is it sounds like the municipalities are going through a lot of work, even taking a vote before we even get to that point of of reviewing their qualifications and then giving us the authority to go ahead and review the whole application. So, as quickly as we can make a decision, I think a lot of the municipalities that may end up participating would probably be anxious to know whether we're going to initiate this or not and how that kind of directs them. And I know we have a number of municipal officials who are going to be here Thursday. Yes. So having that discussion with them and maybe even getting their feedback. They may think this is helpful to them in terms of avoiding some costs which they don't get reimbursed for until down the line.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point. There's still, I think the bidders are not going to back off. Wait till we get this done. They have to go ahead. The time, they've already started. They have to go ahead. But we could at least truncate a lot of those. If there's anybody we kick out of the process soon, we could at least cut those off. And so I think it's absolutely the right idea. We should do it. So we will. I'll take the sense of the group that we'll move on that as quickly as we can. Anything else on expediting? I guess the only two things I can think of, one we talked about, one is, changing the focus on the economic data we need and trying to figure out carefully what do we need to know in advance of the RFPs and getting the RFQ process going ASAP. I guess those are the ones I think of at the moment. Anything else on that? Number 10, number 9? Other business, I know there are one or two things that came up after the agenda came up that was prepared. Commissioner Stebbins, you've got something?
Sure. Just quickly, Commissioner Zuniga and I were traveling around Western Mass last Thursday. As we already discussed, we had a meeting with the folks at the Donahue Institute. It was interesting to see Professor Amidi's work in Missouri. He did make the interesting aside comment that it took Missouri just about 4 years from the date of the passage of their referendum to when their casino riverboats were actually operational at the initial start of how they conducted their business.
So 4 years is kind of what we've been saying too.
Right.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we can't meet expectations and
Right.
hopefully do it sooner, but it was an interesting analogy to have pointed out to us. We also met later in the day with two presidents from the community college system, President Rubenzahl from STCC and President Messner from Holyoke Community College. And just for a quick discussion, and it may be at some point worth our while to have some of the community college presidents come to one of our regular business meetings, but they have all signed a memorandum of agreement.
All the colleges?
All the community colleges. And there are obviously one or more, the 15 community colleges. There are multiple presence within each of the gaming regions as outlined in the law. But they've come together to form the Mass Community College System Casino Careers Training Institute. And again, depending on where these licenses might be awarded, certain community colleges would take the lead on doing job training. They talked about the fact that a lot of courses that they already offer in auditing and financial are going to be some of the skills that are going to be required by the gaming interests that potentially will locate in Massachusetts. They pointed to the curriculum that Atlantic Coast Community College down in New Jersey already uses as kind of the staple for training programs in New Jersey. Pennsylvania has almost adopted that same curriculum, since we obviously have folks from Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and at the end of this week I'll want to talk to them about this. But you know, they had a bigger concern of, one, how do we train people that want a career in this new sector, because it hasn't existed before, and finding the appropriate roadmap in resources out for them to do that. You know, they don't want a young man or woman paying a lot of money to an institution which may be, for lack of a better term, considered fly-by-night, come in and say, oh, we'll train you in a gaming career, and you get your little gaming diploma, and it means absolutely nothing in terms of the skills that a gaming institution is going to need. For our benefit, under the law, you know, there is a provision which says, you know, we shall establish licensure and work permits for employees. The commission may establish, just to get the proper terminology, may establish certification procedures for any training schools and the minimum requirements for reciprocal licensing for out-of-state gaming employees. So I know this is probably at a very early stage, but you know, the community college presidents did reach out to us pretty early on after we had been all named to say, we want to tell you what we're doing, how we want to give opportunities to Massachusetts residents or residents from the region to enter into these careers through an approach which, if they're basing it off the Atlantic Coast Community College model, is already set in place. And we think, because of the window when a license is awarded through the construction period, that hopefully simultaneously there can be an effective job training program going on at the same time. So I only bring it to our attention because we do have a role and responsibility in this. Again, the timing is a little ahead of the gun, but it was a unique presentation. It's great to see all the community colleges kind of working together to kind of gear up for this. It's what community colleges are charged with doing. I think at some point we should have a couple of representatives from the community colleges come and talk to us.
Comment about that?
Sure.
A couple of our subject matter experts are adjunct professors at Atlantic Community College, and they teach courses. So they'll be able to help us understand that a little better.
That's great.
Yeah, I would. I think that was a great summary, but I would only add that what Commissioner Stebbins mentions is these community college presidents, and they realize that they may have maybe 70% of the curricula. I think they threw that number out there, but would need some additional acquisition of curriculum. Some of which is available in Atlantic Community College. So they are looking to invest really into developing curricula. And I think it's very important for us to consider them early relative to protecting that investment. They also feel that they are uniquely positioned as a community college. Many of the hires of casinos have to be 21 or older. And you know, the courses that they do teach already also jive well into many of the positions that a company, a casino operator needs. So it was a great meeting, by the way.
Do we have any funds? We have all these funds where the money goes. Where there some of the casino tax revenue goes? Does any of it? Is there anything for? Yeah. For
I actually
education?
asked that question. There is a fund called the Community College Fund, I believe. I may not do it justice, but they asked that question themselves of the legislature, and the answer was a little. More in the realm of that's meant really for all community college. There was nothing really envisioned specifically designed for training for the gaming industry. Now that's not to say that this commission or even the legislature clearly has, they clearly have a lot of leeway into how those funds may eventually be subsequently disbursed. But it's very broad. relative to funds.
Okay, because some of the money goes to support the community colleges, but
Correct.
there's nothing for investing in the training of personnel.
There's
right?
nothing necessarily
Right.
prescribed in or earmarked, for
Right.
lack of a better word,
Right.
for that.
I mean, it seems like it might be something we would want to think about. I don't know enough about what the capital cost is of gearing up for this, but the community colleges, speaking as somebody from the university system, are very limited resources. A lot of them do a great job of mainstreaming kids who are on the margins, either academically or financially. And conceptually, I wouldn't be averse to figuring out whether it would be appropriate for us to put out some money to jumpstart that process a little bit. I think it'd be a strong statement to the industry that we're really serious. This is an area where we've talked about, is there a way for us to partner with the industry? And I think that's an open question, but this is a way maybe we could. We might even talk to the industry. Maybe the community college is already doing this, but what are the gaps? What problems do you have? And we could also include in that something about, the law enforcement integrity issues. If your training is really buttoned up with respect to obeying the law and understanding what the disclosure requirements are, that serves our interests because we have background check all these people. So I think it would be worth, just sort of thinking about that. I'm not sure if it's within the purview of our money, but I'll bet it is. We have quite a bit of independence, I think, on what we do to invest in the startup of this industry. Maybe it doesn't even cost money. I don't really know, but I think the sign is a good one, and everybody, the governor, the legislature, everybody is in this for jobs. That's what people care most about. And to the extent that we can make sure that they're Massachusetts residents, that they're well-trained, that retention rates are high, that they have the highest skill sets, all of that I think is to the good to implement one of the primary policy objectives of this legislation.
Absolutely.
So,
They did mention some upfront costs in terms of potentially buying the curriculum from Atlantic Coast Community College. There's a license fee that goes along with purchasing the curriculum, as well as, similar to, how do you teach a young man or woman how to work on a CNC machine? It'd be great if you actually had a CNC machine in front of you, a computer numeric control machining tool. But, they talked about if they're going to be people who are going to need to repair, a slot machine, having actual slot machines for, the students to do hands-on training with. So, again, I think kind of furthering the discussion with them at some point to look at what the cost of a training program could be from, purchasing a license to use existing curricula or, some of the hands-on tools that they might need for some of the different occupations, I think would be helpful.
And we shouldn't assume that they would be looking to the commission necessarily for those funds. Part of the conversation was relative to more on a cash flow basis. Much of the training funds can eventually come from the casino operators themselves.
Right.
It's the upfront sort of cash flow and the need that we really need to think about.
Right.
In conjunction with those licensees, but of course, if nobody has gotten a license yet, why would anybody want to put up some money? And so,
I see what you're saying. Yeah, right.
There is, that cash flow really conversation to be had, and really a partnership to be forged between the minimum certifications requirements that this commission will accept, because we will be licensing individuals, and then the partnerships that could be forged between the industry and the community college just by themselves.
Right.
We did hear anecdotal evidence of some of the community colleges already talking with potential gaming interests and essentially going through their their job descriptions. And I think that's where they felt a comfort level that a lot of what they offer in financial and auditing already kind of meshed with the folks that they know the gaming interests will need when they open up operations.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're probably a little bit, this is, maybe a year away before really gearing into this, but I think your suggestion about having a couple people come in, or maybe we just organize a separate event kind of, which is with the community college people, and people from the industry, maybe somebody from this Atlantic, whatever this place is,
College,
and put together a half a day where everybody kind of talks about this, and we think about how to really fine tune it. What's the real value add? How do we really, really do this well? I mean, if we really did it well, maybe we could even export kids, if we could come up with something really good. I don't know whether there's a demand for really well-trained casino professionals or not. There probably is, and maybe we could really break new ground in trying to do this in a really, really buttoned-up way.
In a proactive way. In having a casual conversation with one of our consultants, they raised the prospect that, a community impact issue might be from the influx of new people coming into communities in Massachusetts to work in these industries. And again, that kind of just struck me as, we really want jobs to be created for people in Massachusetts, but because there's no history of gaming here, finding people with that skill set is going to be a challenge for us. And so I think that is what kind of broadened our attention and interest in what the community colleges are willing to do to partner together. So it'll be one of my priorities to have that conversation with our colleagues from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, about how that's worked.
And now that I think about it, there's probably tiering. You think of a person with a 2-year degree, or even just a certificate from a community college, not even an AA degree, could probably be people who work on the floor, work at the games, and so forth. But there must be a middle management level that requires much more expertise that would take people who graduate from a 4-year college and have some degree of maybe more than a year or so of training. And so maybe we're not so far in advance. Maybe it's worth talking to people. Maybe it's not just the community colleges. Maybe it's someplace else, could focus on mid-level people who need to get a degree in something or other that would take longer, so we aren't so far ahead of the 8 ball. But you're absolutely right. I mean, to the maximum extent possible, we don't want these operators to have to go outside Massachusetts to find people to take these jobs. And having us be proactive in that, I think, is a great idea. I think this is really terrific. So I think, maybe, as you say, talk with our consultants a little bit tomorrow or Thursday, and then maybe think about sometime fairly soon, maybe next month or two, trying to put together a follow-up to this meeting.
Okay. Very good.
That's great. Okay, anything else that came up late in the game?
Actually, just a minor, we have our P card, our procurement card. I'll be activating that so we can.
Yay! P card.
P card. Part of the procurement.
Janice, anything else? We're all set? Okay. I think then we are done. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, folks. Thank you, folks.